Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Today we have a really great episode, a new story from Helsingborg City in the south of Sweden. This episode is in collaboration with H22, the making of a smarter city. Today I have a great guest, interesting story. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Björn Bensdorp-Redestam, to Urbanistica podcast. Hey and welcome.
Hey, and thank you for having me here.
Pleasure. How are you doing, Björn?
Just fine. So it's a Monday and back at work, so it couldn't be better.
So you were in a short vacation?
Yeah, I had a week off, kind of, what do you call it? Winter vacation, as kind of sports vacation. And you have it every year in Sweden. So I've been to the Swedish mountains with my children skiing for a week.
Lovely. Are there many people there, or how is it now?
I don't know, where we were, it was a quite good situation, I think. They have been really, if you think about Corona and so, they have been arranging it really good. So you weren't allowed to go into the cafes or restaurants or anything like that yourself. When you were picking out your skis, it was just one person at the time. And I was bringing out skis for 5 persons. So it was quite a heavy work doing that.
I can imagine. So I hope you're fully charged now and ready for this episode.
Yeah.
So Björn, you are our storyteller for this episode. How would you like to introduce yourself? And please tell us, what are you passionate about?
How do I introduce myself? Well, if I think about what I'm doing, my work in my heart, I'm an urban planner. But today, I'm working as a head of a department, working with all kinds of urban planning and so. But half of the time is urban planning, and half of the time is making life easier for other people, how to plan the city, how to do a good job. But in my heart and in the center of me, it's always about urban planning, developing the city, and developing environments for people to live in, the kind of a habitat for us.
I love it, because I'm also an urban planner, and I would love to ask you, how did you decide to become an urban planner? Was it a specific moment, or you just like?
I think I just grew into it. And maybe that's a part of the passion. I don't know how it started, but I know I had been drawing and planning in one way or another since I was a child. And I can remember having a period when I was drawing a lot of railway stations, and my mother's comments was always, well, you should put in more toilets on the railway station or something like that. I was always forgetting the details. And I think that's a part of being an urban planner. It's finding the right level. So I think I have been growing into it. A part of the passion, I think, is I did not think about it from the beginning, but I have found out that's what's make it so fun and makes you always want to go on is. Planning is always about learning new things, trying to understand new situations, trying to understand something you never met before, and making use of it, making something new of it, trying to understand. And I think that's the passion that keeps me going, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, very interesting. So you love dealing with challenges.
Yeah, I could say so. you could say so. Yes.
Yes. So tell me, you're working in Helsingborg municipality. Tell me, what is your position and in which department? How big is your team, and what are you working with? Like,
I work at the Department of Urban Planning and Building, and I'm responsible for a part that's called urban planning, and it heads from strategic planning, looking 50 years into the future, to building permits, but also land survey and so on. And the group I'm working with is 80 persons. So, and divided into 4 different groups with their speciality. So I'm trying to take a hold of all the steps in planning and developing a city.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a very interesting talk about Helsingborg in general, but let's now talk about our focus area for this episode, SeaU, which is. Please share with us, what is the aim of this development project? Where is it going to be?
SeaU is a place that we called it Omfärjan, and Omfärjan means this steam ferry, and it's quite a special place in the history of the city, and I think that is what makes the story strong. This is the place where all the ferries went to Denmark, and where also people came in from abroad. Exactly this spot, and there was this a train station bringing people up to the rest of Sweden and bringing people down to Helsingborg and to the continent. And in the late 80s, they built a railway tunnel under the city, so there was no use of the station anymore, and it was just standing there. And the building was housing a music club called Tivoli, and still does. And that was the ongoing story for almost 20 years, you could say. But at the same time, the city thought that this is one of the best and most interesting spots in the whole of Sweden to develop. And when it's such a special spot and so interesting, it also makes it harder to find the right thing. What could you do? But I think the goal was to just like the ferry was bringing people to Helsingborg, finding reinventing the place, bringing people to Helsingborg again, being that kind of an engine that could help this city develop and move on. So there was a competition how this area should be used, and it ended up with an idea of a combination of housings, but also a hotel and a kind of a Congress meeting place. But what I think makes this place more interesting than a normal Congress is that the aim with the building was not only to house visitors to Helsingborg, but also invite people from the city to join the meeting in the building. So the ground floor is really open. It's like an open space. It's like a kind of a living room for people to enter, where you just could come in, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and just have a sense of what's going on. Not being a participant in the meetings in the buildings, but just sitting there listening, feeling people come and go. And that I think is a really interesting part and thing with this building.
Yeah, so you kept the concept very simple and easy. It's about people, bringing people to this place.
Yeah.
How big?
That's a part of the history of this space, also this place. it was what it always has been used for.
Yeah.
So it was just continuing, but in another shape.
Yes, I understand. And how big is this area, SeaU? Are we talking, how big? Can you give us a sense of the size of the area?
Oh, it's not that very big. It's about 100 times 200 meters, something like that. The area that was given was just the area that was there. So you had to, the limits was already there, and you had to do the best out of it. But that was one of the hard things with the area, because when you just have this spot and you want to fit it in so much, and you have to try to listen and see and understand what the city looks like, what's the shape of the city, what will the city accept, then the hard work starts. So that has been one of the challenges, but also what made the area really interesting when it finally was finished, I think.
Yeah. And also, I guess it's very, how to say, the location is very attractive because it's waterfront and also close to the stations, kind of in the heart of Helsingborg.
Yeah. This spot in the ferries is the reason why the city of Helsingborg exists. The reason is that's the perfect location, going over to Denmark, traveling to the rest of Europe. That's the main reason why Helsingborg exists, and that spot was that we were going to develop. So just like you say, it's 250 meters away from the central station. It's 200 meters away from the city hall, 300 meters away from the medieval city. So it's right in the spot. So you could say it sends a timeline from the old castle on the top of the hill, and this ends up down at the water. You can see the whole history here.
Exactly. And you mentioned that you're welcoming the citizen of Helsingborg, and also their building is for conferences. So what are the target group that you're aiming for? Like, are you aiming for businesses, innovators?
I would say anyone that wants to join and meet in Helsingborg. It could be businessmen, people innovating, but most of all, also a place for the people of Helsingborg visiting and feeling proud about. And I think that was one of the main discussions going on. Was this the right thing to do with this spot or not? Because we were saying this is the best spot in Sweden, not only the best spot in Helsingborg. This is the best spot in Sweden, and should it then be preserved for just the people living here, or what? Or should we let it be handed over to the private market, to a hotel, to a conference? But if we could succeed in combining this, we could give something back to people of Helsingborg, but also inviting people. I think it's a much more interesting place. And during this whole ongoing discussion, I was always thinking about there's two hotels, old famous hotels in Helsingborg. One is called Mollberg, and one is called the Grand Hotel. And they're quite well known in Sweden. And I would say most people in Helsingborg has never lived there for one night, but still we can feel proud about those buildings, and we could enter them having a lunch or something like that. That's a part of the city, even though you don't use it as a hotel. And I think this could be the same thing. And you could compare with the old history of cafes in Vienna or something like that. People were living there. It was not only housing. It could just be a mutual area to meet, having a coffee, but not at least changing ideas.
Yes. So it's also about giving access to the citizen to be part of this building as well,
Yeah.
or an area.
Yeah. And well, if you look at the design, there has been a lot of effort on opening the ground floor. It should be that feeling that the ground floor is a part with a direct connection to what happens around the building, the streets, the square outside. That you should have a feeling of you being able to float between. There should be no border, something like that, between what's inside and what's outside. That has been very important. So the whole ground floor is like a public area, but on the inside. But the city has also been working and works now a lot with how should the area around it be designed. So we have been designing a kind of a combined city square and park, and working a lot with the levels around the building. So it's almost like it's a kind piece of a furniture in the city, where you could sit on the south side of the building in the springtime, letting the sun reaching your face for the first time after the whole cold winter, and so on. So there's been a lot of effort in that way.
Yeah, and I guess during the expo we will visit this and experience like having the sun in our faces after this long winter.
Yeah.
So we're talking now about social sustainability in urban planning and design. As you mentioned, give the public space to people, the buildings to people. How about the ecological part of sustainability? How much sustainability are we talking about, material wise?
The first step in sustainability, I would say, is where should different types of functions be placed? Where should a hotel be placed in the city? Where should we have the housings and so on? That was the first thing. And I think the good thing here was to reuse an area that was for 20 years only used as a parking space, and an area that's 250 meters away from a central station could be used in a much better way. That was the first step in sustainability. The second step that was a big question for us was sometimes I don't consider this being sustainability, but trying to understand what might happen in the future with a rising sea level and so. So for us, it has been an important thing to build a building that was raised higher than the other buildings around. And we have been working a lot with the levels of the ground around the building. So it will be a part of the protection of an older city behind it if we get a raised sea level and heavy storms. So in that sense, it has been a good thing. In the other sense, there has been a use of quite traditional materials, and so it has not been a first aim to work with wood constructions or anything like that. And on another way, you could say it well. When you build such a big building, when it's ready, it's almost like it's sometimes out of fashion in that sense. You could always say it's like it's out of this time. The development is going on really fast. But on the other hand, I know they have been working really hard with energy efficiency, and so that's also a goal about finding economy in the building, so building an energy efficient building and so on.
Yeah, and also because SeaU is gonna be an important element in H22 Expo or journey. Yeah. So how do you think SeaU is contributing to that journey and to create a smart city? From which aspect?
To me, H22 is much about not trying to it's not saying, look, we are the best, look what we have been doing. The H22 is trying to get better, trying to learn, trying to strive on in a development, because what we think is good now is not good enough in about 10 or 15 or 20 years. And so that is the important part for me in H22. It's just a kind of a line in development. It's a timeline in development. But so what SeaU is about is in a kind of an arena for people to meet and discuss, and together finding out and trying to understand how could we do things better. That is what the SeaU is about for me in H22. It's a kind of arena. And it was quite interesting. I read an article that from Gert Wingård, quite famous Swedish architect, and he was one of the competitors for the SeaU, but he didn't win. Yeah, he said this was I didn't do it as good as this, so it's fair play. But what he said is, well, SeaU is about finding sustainability in building something that could change over time. It's a hotel now, it's a meeting place of some kind in 20 years, it's maybe something else in 50 years, and that's what it's about. And that is what I think is important in the City Expo of H22, trying to understand how things can develop and trying to understand sustainability. It's not just about now, it's trying to understand how is development looking like for the next 20 years, 50 years or something like that.
Yeah, it's about building something flexible for now and for the future.
And for the future, not thinking, well, this is perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
We aren't perfect. H22 is not about perfection. H22 is about understanding how to be flexible and accept change, I think, and make it better.
Yeah, and also now, like me and as an urban planner, and I guess you know this issue in our cities, that things are not really flexible. That's why we are facing a lot of challenges now.
Yeah,
like the areas are already have a specific function and they cannot be transferred to something else. How much flexibility are we talking about in SeaU?
Well, it is a building that's specialized working as a congress hall and a hotel, and a part of it is housings. So it's hard to me to say how flexible is it, but I was talking to some of the people working there, and they have already been thinking about that. How can we change parts of the building already now? And that's due to the corona, because when it was designed, we didn't know anything about corona or its effects. And they have been starting to consider, well, should some parts of it be changed now? Should we be able to use it in another way? Because maybe meetings won't be going on like this, or like they have, or they will. You don't know. So it's hard for me to say, but I think they themselves will find out how it could be used in a flexible way. But I have the same opinion about you, that like you, that's one of the problems. Trying to, if you think that that things has been ready planned for its final goal, you will miss the goal totally. But that's quite interesting if you walk in part that was used to be the medieval parts of Helsingborg, you will find people walking there with the telephones in their hands, and you will have running water in the toilets there. Sometimes it is. I think it's trying to be as simple as possible in the way you plan the city, and you will open up the opportunities for how it could be used in the future.
And Björn, I wanted to talk more about this topic with you. You work in urban planning department in Helsingborg. So how do you see the development of Helsingborg? Are you going toward a more flexible city, like in general? Do you have this as a criteria for the new master plans and developments?
Yes, I would say so. So when we're working with strategic planning and so on, if I would go back, let's say, I have not been working that long, but if you go back 30 years ago, it was much more like, this is an area for housing, this is an area for the city center, this is an area for industry. And now we are talking much more about mixed areas and trying to find solutions for that. But that is not easy, because that's when you have to find solutions on the conflicts also between different interests. But that's also what makes the city much more interesting and I would say livable in a sense.
Yeah. And also, how is it going now in Helsingborg? Because SeaU is a kind of a development project in the inner city. How much attention do you pay in Helsingborg to the outer city, like the areas that not really in the city center, in the downtown? Do you pay the same amount of attention to this area? How is it going?
Absolutely, I would say so. We are paying a lot of attention to areas which you could say has, easily described as areas with social problems, or with buildings that has not been built in such a good sustainable way as they should be, and we are paying a lot of attention to that. But that's not only a question about urban planning. It's then you have to work in we are working in a wider approach together with other parts of the city, that has a better understanding how the social questions about social development. We're working, for instance, in an area called Drottninghög, and in the beginning it's always easy that you will get hooked on what you think that's the solution. Let's tear those houses down and build up something new, and everything is fixed. That's not the way to do it, I think. So you have to try to connect together with people working in the schools and people working in finding new jobs for people and so on. It's always a combination of like that. But we're also paying a lot of attention at the moment on smaller villages around the city of Helsingborg, that they are just as important. And there's two ways of thinking of that. It's number one, don't miss those areas, because that will give you problem in the future. But number two, there's a lot of people who find that way of living the best way of living, and that you always have to have in mind that your way of thinking is just one way of thinking. Everyone will find their own way of a good life, what they find an attractive way of life. So you have to work with all the different areas and let them develop their own kind of an attractive livability, I would say. One thing like that is not a thing that's a quick fix in this moment. So For instance, the city has been working for a very long time with the small villages, and always been fighting for that they should be able to keep or even get a new small railway station. So at the moment, we have in the city of Helsingborg, we have 10 smaller villages who has their own railway station. And that's quite important because it's not only a way for people to travel easy into the city, but it also gives them, I would say, a kind of a pride that this is my village and we have our own station with our own little grocery store or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And now I have a question actually that I got on LinkedIn. And now you're talking about the villages and connecting them with a railway station. Is it something luxury that Helsingborg City give, or this you think this is a very necessary to the villages? And it's of your duty to give them these rail stations.
We can't give them railway stations. That's something we have to do in cooperation with the rail companies and so.
Yeah.
But it's a. I would think, is it a necessity? Maybe, maybe not. But if it makes life easier for people living there, it should always be an aim, a goal for us to work in that direction. That's something you only can, that kind of goals you can only reach if you have a kind of an agreement over time. So it's not something that we have been working on for 2 years. This is something that has been going on for 40, 50 years, that we have this thing that we always have to work for this, even though even though it won't happen my own time, I have to do something now for it to happen in the future.
Yeah, exactly. This is the interesting thing with urban planning, that project takes ages, and maybe it's very difficult that you finish a project. And I think we should be very happy if it's like we finish a project during the what do you call it, the time when we work there, or because I heard like some people, they spent 10 years in order to get something happen. So in urban planning, it feels like things getting a bit in a slow motion.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's true. And we can enjoy the fruits of what someone else has been doing before us, but we have to plant those seeds for others in the future also. And I would be happy if it happens. Some things, now I'm growing that old, so well, I'm not dead yet. Some things I think, I really hope that I live so I can see it happen. But I think that's a necessity to have that mindset, always to try to think that even though it happens far on in the future, at least you should try.
Yeah. So Björn, do you think that SeaU, the future generation of Helsingborg, will say, "Oh, SeaU is a great project. Thank you so much"?
And I think so. It's quite. If you go back to the history of this place, a lot of the argument that was going on in the city, because a lot of people were not happy at all. It was I had a sense of people wanted it to preserve something, to preserve something that was happening 30 years ago on this place, because that was a part of their memory, and I have full respect for that. But at the same time, a younger generation were not old enough to remember it functioning as a railway station. So they were referring to it as Tivoli, a music and concert, a place for music and concerts. That was on their mindset, and that's still gone. We moved the station 50 meters away, So that's still going on, and I think each generation will have their own memories of a place, and you have to respect that and try to take something to get nourish to take something with you from the history into the future, and that we have been trying to do here. So I think, yes, I think people will thank us, and people that maybe are 10 years old now, 15 years old now, for them that this will be the place where they were sitting having coffees when they were 21 or something like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully so. And I see that Helsingborg is a very beautiful city. You have you have the sea, you have a medieval city, you have the villages, farms, and also the urbans. What are the challenges that you're facing as an urban planning department?
Urban planning is always about challenges. Today there are quite a lot. One in general, and this is not only about Helsingborg. We were talking about kind of sustainability now is flexibility in the urban planning, and trying to making that flexible planning so the city could live on has always to meet that we are making things more and more complex. I have been thinking a lot about why are we doing it like this, and sometimes I think it's like we don't want to accept those conflicts, so we want to solve every conflict and not accepting them. And a city is a mixture of conflicts, otherwise it wouldn't be a city. And that's a general thing, I think. When it comes to Helsingborg, I would say a city is always dependent on its surroundings. So what's happening around other cities, in what kind of a context are we living? So, and that's also the two sides of a coin. The world is getting smaller, so it's how should you explain it? More people is coming to Helsingborg, but it's also easier for people going to other places. So it's in a way it's more like a competition going on between different cities today, and I think you have to try to find out, and not trying to be like everyone else, but trying to find out what is unique about Helsingborg and develop that. And that I think it's the possibility and kind of an opportunity we have for the future.
Yeah, it's also like it's a lot of talk about, okay, how do we attract talents? How do we keep the people instead of letting them move to other cities and so on? Yeah. So I think you mentioned a very interesting thing is about thinking how to be unique and not copy paste what other cities do.
Yeah. So it's quite easy to just try to make a copy paste, and
exactly
most of the times you won't succeed.
That's because I think for me, like from user point of view, I would love to go to the original one. I will never go to a copy. You know, like why should I go to a copy when the original one is there?
Yeah.
So interesting reflection.
Yeah. And I think Helsingborg is quite a unique place. It's a beautiful town, and it's unique in that way that it is a city that's it's a combination of being, sometimes I feel quite conservative, but at the same time it's striving on, trying to develop. It's conflicts of interest within the city. But that makes it interesting also.
Yeah. No, I really love Helsingborg because also I spent some of my years here growing up, and yeah, we have a really beautiful combination of the green, urban, and the blue water. So take us to the future, Björn. In 1 year in Expo 2022, what will we see when we will visit Helsingborg? What will we see in SeaU?
In SeaU, well, in H22, you will be able to experience different types of environments, parts of the city, experience different types of solutions or ideas about solutions. That's from social questions to technical questions. And when it comes to SeaU, I'd like to think beyond the building or the place. It's I'd like to see the meeting place. This is where most people will get to meet. This is the place to discuss. That's my hope for it. A place of discussion and trying to understand. Not a place. It's a beautiful place. It's a very nice environment. It's a great building, but that's not the important thing when it comes to SeaU. I would say in H22.
So it's more about we meet each other, talk, and discuss different questions related to our life in the city.
Yeah, but I also think that you have to. Everyone, the people that will come to H22, it will be people from Helsingborg living here that with pride wants to experience their own city. That's one important part, and has always been in these kinds of expos. But it's also people coming to Helsingborg, wants to see new techniques in sewer plants, how to purify water, and so on. That's one other part. So I think the interesting thing is the mixture, and then maybe people will come with one idea. This is what I want to experience, and on the other hand, they will get some kind of a aha, wow, I did not expect this. Then it's we have achieved a lot. If people experience something that they were not thinking about at all, that's an extra plus for the project.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to visit the area and also hopefully to have a coffee with you and talk further about urban planning.
Yeah, in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Björn, we are almost in the end of this great episode. I would love that you give us, the listeners, 3 takeaway messages.
3 takeaway messages. Always try to be open-minded. Always try to learn new things and be happy about learning new things. And well, that's a big one. Number 3, what could that be? Always try to look on the bright side of life. There is always opportunities, so look on the bright side.
Yes, thank you so much for your messages, Björn. And do you have a question for us, the listeners, that we reflect about it?
I think if you're coming to Helsingborg or have been to Helsingborg, please tell us, what do you find unique about the city of Helsingborg? Because when you're living in the city or you work in the city, you will get, in a way, you will get home blind. As I don't know if you could say it like that in English, but in Swedish we say home blind. You get blind when you're at home.
Yeah.
So please tell me.
So Björn, you're asking for feedback from the visitors.
Yeah. What's unique about Helsingborg? What should we take care of?
Yeah. Maybe this should be discussed in the SeaU, you know?
Yeah, perhaps.
I think it's going to be an interesting question to listen to what people think.
Yeah, and people discussing their own cities in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the beauty of the conversation from a citizen in Helsingborg and a visitor. Maybe like a citizen doesn't really think this is something really unique with Helsingborg, but a visitor think, oh, look at this. You're so lucky that you're having this. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. Sometimes, when you were on a vacation, in the old times, you were sending a picture card. What's the picture card of Helsingborg? What would people send? What kind of a picture card would they send when they were visiting Helsingborg that I don't set my mind on at all? So
interesting.
That hidden pearl somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. What are your hobbies apart from urban planning and designing the city of Helsingborg? What do you do?
Hobbies. I'm listening a lot to music. I always have. I'm sailing during the summer, but I'm not a good sailor. And I'm going skiing in the winter times, and I might be an even worse skier. So, but that's a nice hobbies. But I would say, and that's a bit of not a problem, but if you're into urban planning, you are living with your work. You will always be fascinated by something when you walk around, when you're visiting, even though it's in a vacation, you will take a photograph of a street or something like that. You never can let it go. So I would say that's a part of my hobbies, my work.
That's amazing and lovely to hear. Björn, what will be the next step for you after leaving this podcast?
The next step, at the moment, my mind is very much set on development in the future of the harbor areas to the southern parts of Helsingborg. We were talking about long-term planning, so it's a really long perspective, but that will be a big topic on my mind. There's also a big discussion going on about they will have to build a new hospital in the city, and the big topic now is should they stay at the area where they are now, or should the whole hospital move to another place? And it has been placed in this area for over 100 years, but it has been growing too small, and it's a really interesting topic, because it's not only about moving a hospital, it's also about what will happen to that part of the city, or even the whole city, when you move a hospital, in the structure, how people move. The bus infrastructure is very much connected to passing the hospital at the moment, because it's such an important spot in the city. So that's my main topics at the moment.
This is so interesting, Björn.
Yeah.
And also difficult, kind of a big challenge. This one is a really tough challenge.
Very, very tough, and so interesting, I would say.
Yeah. This is, I think, again, this is the beauty of urban planning, these challenges, solving these kind of challenges. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully see you in Helsingborg during the expo.
You're welcome, and I look forward to seeing you.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.